2017 marks 50 years of winemaking in the Margaret River region. Today, Margaret River is revered as one of the world's best wine-growing regions with award-winning wine of the highest quality. But how did it all start? European settlers first arrived in the Margaret River region in the 1830s to establish farms. None of them could have imagined a wine industry at that time. Dairy and timber were the region's main industries for more than a century. It wasn't until the 1960s that the idea of commercial vineyards was first recommended by Dr. John Gladstones from the University of Western Australia.
John published a paper, and if my memory's right, entitled "The Southwest of Western Australia in Relation to Vine Growing." And that really probably inspired Dr. Tom Cullity to establish his Vas Felix vineyard.
Tom Cullity spent a long time selecting the very right bit of dirt.
With my Jarrett hand auger, I did thousands of holes, I guess, over the years.
And in 1967 planted these vines, and to this day they're still the most beautiful performing vines that we have here at Vas Felix.
Following the Vas Felix planting soon came Mosswood, Cape Mentelle and Cullens.
Mosswood Vineyard was established in 1969, and the original planting was the Horton clone of Cabernet Sauvignon.
The original cuttings came via South Africa with our first settlers, and it was all pre-phylloxera material. Those cuttings had never had contact with American rootstocks and never had the opportunity to be involved with a bit of virus.
The Horton clone was the result of selections done by Jack and Dorum Mann, who were also mentors and advisors to Bill and Sandra Pannell here in the early years. Jack Mann was something of a legend in the West Australian wine industry, both a stern critic and strong supporter of the new producers in Margaret River, and Dorum similarly a great supporter and advisor. So there were actually two different selections of the Horton clone planted here. The first one was Jack Mann's selection. Jack had his favourite vines in the Horton vineyard, and if a grower wanted to take some cuttings, then Jack would send his pruners out, take cuttings off the selected vines, and that was what was planted.
That was from the original patch of vines at Horton. There was about 14 acres altogether. When I was still in the department, I went through the patch there for several years and picked out, I can't remember, maybe 50 vines that every year for those 3 years grew nicely, had set a nice level of crop, and then we took cuttings from those vines.
And so the second planting at Mosswood was of that super selection. And then everything propagated from here afterwards, both additional vineyards at Mosswood and also other growers who were looking for material to plant new vineyards in Margaret River, all came from the super selection. It's important to understand the value that these people brought, because there was no viticultural history in the Margaret River region. The growers were starting from scratch, and people with significant experience were highly sought after and extremely valuable.
There was essentially no infrastructure for viticulture. We didn't have a supply chain for the supplies that we needed. We didn't have local engineers and local fabricators that could give us what we wanted. It was a time of great inventiveness, of making do with what we had and perhaps even fabricating what we needed ourselves. But that again was all part of the challenge.
In the early days, one of the interesting things about this region was the pioneer growers were all very intense and intellectually driven people. What this led to was really an enthusiasm for and a commitment to doing it as well as Margaret River could, with the expectation that sometime in the future we would be making wines that would hold their own on the world stage.
As my late father expressed it when somebody asked him what was the prospect of growing high quality table wines in our lower regions of Western Australia, and he very quickly told them it wasn't a prospect, it was our destiny.